How's it going, everybody? My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bushradical. And welcome to part 3 of my knife series, Bushradical Knife Shop. Today I want to talk about the problems I've had up to this point. I also want to talk about my designs, show you guys my concepts, and kind of get your take on where I'm going with the direction in my designs. I want to give you guys my thoughts on knife making up to this point. That is the steel I'm using, why I've chose to use it, what I've changed about my shop, what I've learned so far. So if you're like me, just starting off as a knife maker, if you've been following this series, I hope there's going to be a ton of good stuff in this video that you're going to find hopefully valuable or at least entertaining. So let's jump right into it. Now first off, one of the big changes has been my grinder. I had a table mounted on here that swung out of the way and it was just stupid. It didn't really work very well. So what I did was built this housing with bar stock and shims. The idea here being I can take this table completely off or put the table completely back on very quickly and get it out of the way. Also, one other thing about this table, I made this table to actually swivel. The idea here is I can slide this table in, lock it with this set screw back here, loosen up the bolts that hold this bottom bar to the table. Just take this standard carpenter's speed square, put it up against the belt, and adjust the table like this. Kind of crude, but if I want a 5-degree angle, I just set it to 5 degrees and lock it in. If I wanted a 10, I just set it to 10 and then lock the table down. Very basic, but very useful, very simple. I've also sold off one of my bandsaws and I bought this portaband, and I'll have a video coming out very soon. It's already shot about how I mounted that, in case you're wondering, in case you want to maybe do something similar. And that's about it for the changes. Now let me get on to the problems I've had and what I've decided to do about them. Now the first problem is I ordered A2 steel originally. They sent me D2 steel because they were out of A2. I accepted it. But honestly, from everything I've read, it's a little brittle for the kind of knives I want to make. I don't have a design that's 3/16, which is what this is at the moment. So that D2 steel is just going to stay there until I got a design I'm comfortable with, and then I'll have that water jetted. That leads me to another thing that I've totally changed. I've always had it in my mind I wanted to get a design and have them water jetted. The reason I like that idea is because you're not spending hours and hours cutting blanks and drilling blanks. Now the only problem with that is you're kind of committed to one design at a shot, and it's about 10 bucks a blank. And you're also sending your stuff off, you're waiting for it to be done, you're paying the shipping to get it back, paying the shipping to get it out there, and you're just waiting, you don't have anything to do. So I have decided I'm going to cut blanks from here on out. So as opposed to using D2 steel in a sheet, water jetted out, I've bought a good quantity of A2 steel, precision ground, and this is all 1/8 inch stock. So it's, it's right about in that good wheelhouse for a bushcraft type of knife. The other great thing about this kind of steel is there's no mill scale on it. Right from the get-go, it's pretty close to being finished. A lot of the cheaper steels come like this with mill scale, and you can see this has probably been cut on a shear, and it needs to be not only cleaned off, but it actually needs to be ground flat so it's it's not wavy. I mean, you can see right up here at the top. It's not flat. So all the knives that I'm running this spring, they're all going to be 01. They're all going to be an 1/8 inch thick. And one of the big reasons I decided to go with 01 is it's very easy to heat treat in-house. I've kind of completely shifted gears from going, I want to water jet my blanks, I want to send them out for heat treat, to the other end of the scale. I'm enjoying the flexibility of being able to cut out any pattern I want on the portaband and then shape it up on the belt grinder, and each knife can be its own thing. I don't have to make 100 of one thing and commit $1,500 in blanks. I can make a one-off. I can make a knife that's a little different than the last one if I want to change things a little bit. I think it's a much more flexible way to work, and so far I'm really enjoying it. So everything I'm going to be doing here this spring is going to be 01, it's going to be 1/8 inch. Let me show you my designs. Oh, designing. One of the things that I've found is I don't seem to have like a natural talent for design. I just kind of take what I think would make a good knife and cut it out and try it. So this is my very first design, pattern 1. I sat down and was drawing this pattern out, and I thought this is about what I would want. I wanted something that was a very small, kind of Puko-esque utilitarian knife. The problem is when I actually went and cut that knife out in steel, I found out, you know what, I don't really know about that handle. It doesn't feel as good as you would think it would. So, this design, I figured I'd stretch it a little bit. This pattern evolved into this, which is, you know, it's a little bit longer. It's essentially the same pattern, but it's like a 1/4 inch longer. And I made one of these as a mock-up. And this is the knife that I ended up with. You know, this is just a mock-up. This is not, this isn't knife steel per se. This isn't, there's really no edge on it. I just wanted to get the handle figured out to where I could say, okay, this is a pattern I'm gonna go with. It's a fantastic thing to start designing on a grinder. Because I thought this was a very interesting design. I thought this is what I liked. When I actually made one, it felt too small. When I made this a little bit bigger and put a handle on it, I found that I did not like such a drastic curve here, and I didn't like such a drastic curve there. This has changed amazingly. You know, this really distinct belly here that went almost the full length of the handle, that has changed a ton. And where it was really pronounced down here, I didn't really care for that. You can see that that's been changed quite a lot. So, this is going to be my very first production design. I'm going to call this knife the Minto. And the reason I'm going to call it the Minto is because one of my favorite places to fish in Alaska is called Minto Flats. And you know, this is kind of a, when I think of a Puko style knife, it just makes me think of fishing. And Minto Flats is my favorite fishing spot. This is going to be the first knife I actually produce in any quantity, and I'm going to call this the Minto. I like how the back end of the handle kind of thins out. It seems to me like, you know, when you sit a knife in your hand, you know, it's resting on this part of your hand, and then your pinky is 1/2 inch in farther from the outside of your hand. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that design in the back. I think it locks into your hand really good. Also, with your fingers here being shorter, I think there's a natural tendency to want something a little smaller on this portion of your hand, kind of the back end of your hand. I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably offer this in a Scandi grind and maybe a convex. Now, due to the amazing efficiency of the Portaband, so far I've cut 5 of these out, and it takes me maybe, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes to cut 5 patterns and then clean them up on the belt grinder. So I'm really happy with that process. So I think my grinder is turning in a good grind. This particular blank is ready for heat treat, other than it needs some holes drilled in it. There's another copy of the Minto. I also took that basic design and made it much more flat backed, where this design has a definite low spot and then a rise to the handle. This is a pattern that's almost identical, except for the fact that the points line up in a completely different spot. There's about a 1/4 inch difference in where the points line up on these two knives. Where the Minto kind of has an upswept blade, just a touch, and kind of a low spot in the top of its form. This second pattern is essentially the same knife, but much more of a straight back to the blade, and the point is about a 1/4 inch lower. I couldn't get it out of my head that I wanted both of those designs. So there's the Minto. Here is a blank for the Minto. And here is a blank for a knife I don't have a name for yet. That's basically the same concept with a lower tip. I like both of these. I'm not going to go one or the other. I'll just cut them out different and make different knives. If you guys got a name you want to throw out, I don't have a name for this one yet. Give me some suggestions. Might take them, might ignore them. I don't know. Now, I love a Kephart style knife. I think the simplicity of the handle in and of itself it's just hard to beat. It's a great pattern because it's so basic, it's so simple, very utilitarian. So I'm working on a Kephart too. Let me show you that. Here's my basic concept for a Kephart. Now, I know that every Kephart knife in the world looks pretty much the same. And the reason being is, you know, it's a hard design to beat. So what is different about this Kephart than every other Kephart on the planet? And why would I change it? Well, for starters, the biggest thing is I've decided to make this blade just a touch more of a drop point. Like, of all the other Kepharts I've had that I've used, the spear point is actually, it's much more like this. It's much more right down the center line of the knife, and this point is probably 1/4 of an inch higher than most Kephart points. Where I like a knife that has a little bit more of a usable tip. Now this of course is just a mock-up. The grind is just there to show, you know, a grind. It's all over the place. The handle that I'm going to probably use in production, I'll probably use like a 3/16 micarta. This is cherry, and they're 1/4 inch scales with an 1/8 inch blade. It feels fantastic in the hand, but I think ultimately it would be a little fatiguing to be that thin. I think having just a little bit more in your hand would make your hand feel a little bit better. So this is another pattern I'm working on. I've got, I don't know, about 10 blanks cut out for this one. Let me know what you guys think. So that's pretty much where I'm at with the knife shop as of right now. Lots of people ask me what's going on, where are you at? I had that batch of Ulus I needed to take care of this spring and get that out. But ultimately, I've pretty much changed everything. The ideas that I had originally, water jet, send it out for heat treat, it basically takes all the work out of it, but it costs twice as much. And then it also locks you into one design or two designs. Really the worst part about it is all you're doing is making a decision and then waiting and spending money. And I don't like any of those things. I don't like to make decisions. I hate waiting and I hate spending money. So I think it's a much better fit personally to do everything in-house. Do the heat treating in-house, do all of the profiling and all the cutting out in-house, using a steel that I can work with without sending it out. I think it's a much better fit. It's much better for somebody that wants to, you know, constantly try stuff and change stuff and not be locked into a run. Now I understand guys that are doing 300 knives and it's a production run. You know, that's the way to do it. You know, have them blown out at a water jet company, send them down to Peter's Heat Treat. But me personally, you know, I don't think it's as good of a fit as I thought it was originally. I'm also working on kind of a standard center line Kephart. You know, there's about 1 million of these knives out there. There's the Condor Bushlore, there's the LT Wright Outback. Great knives. I've never owned an Outback. I have owned a Bushlore. It's basically a Kephart style blade with a contoured handle. And, you know, I'll be working on that, but I'll definitely be designing on the grinder, because I find when I put my ideas on paper and then I cut out a blank from ideas, it's a stupid knife. The grinder and your hand tell you everything. Your ideas seem great until you cut a knife out and put it in your hand and you're like, ah, that sucks. So I think I'm going to start with a pattern like this and then see where the grinder takes me and what my hand tells me. Because ultimately that's, you know, I think that's kind of the way I'm going to work. I'll dial it in so it fits the human hand and not just looks cool on paper. So that's pretty much where I'm at. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Hope you guys like my new patterns. If you guys have a name in mind for the Bushradical Knife Shop brand, I don't have a name yet. So throw your ideas underneath and maybe we'll use one of them. Thank you guys so much for watching the Bushradical Knife Shop series. My name's Dave Whipple, and you've been watching Bushradical. Be radical, eh? See you soon.